And then when the CEO transition came along, I raised my hand because I felt like I was the right person at the right time for this. But I can tell you, Rianna, when I started with SSR, I had no vision or desire or even thought in my head that that's a role I wanted to be in at some point. I think it's about focusing on what value you bring in the moment you're in and the position you're in at the time.
Hello, and welcome to our podcast, Breaking Ground Women in AEC Leadership. This is the show that lifts the voices, journeys, and insights of women shaping the future of architecture, engineering, and construction, and it's brought to you by Unanet. If you're in the architecture, engineering, or construction space, you know how critical it is to keep your projects on time, your teams aligned, and your pipeline growing, and of course, your finances in check. That's where Unanet comes in with project based ERP solutions, CRM solutions, and an AI growth suite built specifically for AEC firms. I'm your host, Rianna Dempsey. In each episode, we will connect with professionals across the AEC industry to share real stories and hard earned wisdom. At our core, we believe that a strong, diverse workforce drives innovation and success, and that women are essential to building the future of AEC. This is more than a conversation, it's a community focused on growth and lasting impact. So let's get started. All right. Today, I'm so excited to be speaking to Susan Osterberg. Susan is the CEO and president at Seckman Reid, and also the chair of the board of directors. I'm pretty sure that's like 3 full-time jobs. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Rihanna. I appreciate it.
So excited to get to meet you over the computer. And definitely want to hear more about, your full introduction, a little bit more about, what you do today. But before we jump in, we like to start with a little icebreaker and warm up just to get to
Sure.
know you a little bit better. So, let's go with what's the last movie or show that you really enjoyed?
Well, I'm actually kind of, I think you said you like to paint outside the lines. So I'll paint outside the lines a little bit. I'm not a big TV watcher, but I am a huge sports fan. And so
Okay.
for me, watching some good football and certainly the World Series that just ended was kind of captured my attention. And then in addition to that, it's kind of I'll use a live show, if you will. I just met my sister in New York for a weekend, and we go there probably 2 times or more a year, and we take in a lot of Broadway shows. So those are probably my latest and greatest watches.
Nice. What did you see on Broadway?
Well, we actually saw several things. We kind of take it all in, and pack it all in, if you will. The one I really thought a lot about that is kind of related to business was the brand new Broadway show that opened with Kristen Chenoweth, which most people know exactly who she is,
Oh,
right?
yes.
She's an incredible talent. But it made me think about it work related, the standout that you can be a really good talent, but if you don't have the supporting cast and the story or the opportunity to really drive something forward, it's not a one man show. And I think I liken that honestly to the work that we do here at Smith Seckman Reid. It's not about one person; it's about hundreds of people doing incredible work every day.
That is amazing. I used to love, going to New York myself. I haven't been in a while because I don't feel like taking the kids because it's just too much, but we saw Wicked when it opened, the
Yeah,
first, like, way back when
right.
that I have not been in a while, but I love the live shows.
Yeah.
And then we watched the Commanders. I'm in the Maryland area. I'm a Ravens fan, my
Okay.
husband's a Commanders fan, and so last
Oh.
night was very sad for us. It was a terrible, terrible game to stay up and watch. I didn't watch the whole thing, but
Well, I'm a Steelers fan with my oldest,
no.
and they beat the
Oh,
Colts. So I'm sorry we're on opposing. We're obviously on
bummer.
opposing sides there.
It's always us and you guys. It's just, yeah, yeah. But hey, Baltimore and Pittsburgh are so similar. We're very similar. So, um, well, so you started segueing into kind of the work that you all do.
Yeah.
And do you call it SSR? Do you usually use the whole
Either
name?
either one is fine.
Okay.
SSR for the people that know us. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit, just quick. We'll get into your career journey for sure, because I want to unpack
Mhm.
stuff there. I'm very excited to hear about your journey. But in terms of, what the business does today and, your roles and kind of everything that you oversee, would love to give your 2-minute intro, and then any other personal things you want to include as well. So just your
Sure.
bio, if you will.
Yeah, sure. So, first, I guess for Smith Seckman Reid or SSR, I mean, we're based in Nashville, Tennessee. We actually just acquired a firm last week, so we are 700 plus owners in our organization. Probably the thing to me that is the most compelling and interesting about what we do is not just the work we do, but it is about the ownership model that we have. And so we are a company made up of all owners in our organization. So we are a 100% employee owned company through an ESOP, so an employee stock ownership plan. We love that about what we do because there are not the haves and the have nots. We literally from day one are all owners of this organization. So we're a very broad based organization from the standpoint of the services that we provide. We have many different business units and provide services from MEP, which is mechanical, electrical, plumbing, to building enclosure, to building optimization and sustainability, to transportation, to civil engineering, just very broad based. And today now have 11 separate business units that we provide, dozens of services to our clients. As I said, we're based in Nashville, Tennessee. We're very, very strong presence in the Southeast and Texas is the primary geographies that we reside in.
Okay. Well, congratulations on the new acquisition. That's great.
Thank you.
Um, And so you mentioned because I've worked in a bunch of different industries, and you
Yeah.
don't see the amount of employee ownership. I feel it is very prevalent in the AEC markets that we
Yeah.
serve. And what do you think it, I guess, what's the biggest benefit to that? You alluded to it a little bit, but I would love to
Yeah.
hear more.
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't. I think I don't know if you see it a lot or a little. I know that employee ownership is really, there's so many firms in our industry still that start up because a few people decided they're going to stand up their own engineering firm or their own AE firm. And they grow to 10, 15, 25, 50 people, which honestly is still the great majority of our industry.
Yeah.
There are many, many small companies like that. The biggest challenges that companies face are two things. One is ownership transition, and one is
Mhm.
leadership transition. And so we've worked really hard on both of those areas. And so we are 57 years in business, Rihanna. And one of the things that was particularly interesting to us was it was 10 years ago, this upcoming spring, that we became 100% ESOP. And so
Okay.
prior to that, we were actually a partial ESOP. And so I like to call the generation I'm working in the fourth leadership generation of our company. And in our second generation, they actually purchased the company partially through an ESOP. And so we've been a partial ESOP for a very long time. 9 years plus ago now, we became 100% ESOP, where we bought the remaining shares back and made them
Okay.
brought it back into the company. So to me, the real benefit is that helping people to see that whatever we do and whatever we achieve inside of the organization, we're just benefiting one another. And
Yeah.
so you have, companies where there might be 4, 5, 6, 10 owners. Everything you're doing and the work you're doing is really benefiting that small group.
Yeah.
Or, as you know, probably in the industry today, there's so much private equity money
Yeah.
out there. I meet with every new owner of our company, Rihanna, at the 6-month mark and in small groups. And one of the things I talk to them about is understanding that I get private equity calls weekly, and they want to invest in us, right? And they want to give us their money, and I ask our new owners, what do you think my answer is to that. And of course, the answer is no, but I want them to understand we have our path, we have our plan, we're going to go at our pace, and we
Mm-hmm.
don't need that external influence. And so, to me, we just control our future inside this organization as 100% ESOP, and everybody benefits from it. Our goal is to be a generational firm. And we don't want to have that outside influence. And frankly, we don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
We're high performing. We are people centric. That's called the era of and that
Mm-hmm.
is fourth generation. And frankly, we're a debt free company that I want to help create wealth for all of the owners of this organization. More importantly, pass it on to the next generation as I exit the company in whatever time frame.
So much of what you said just resonates, and I can imagine how motivating that is for someone coming in and because I saw it all over your website, like we own it, right? So like that just
Absolutely.
mentality is probably contagious and yeah, it's like we're all benefiting, which is like you said, a lot of places that's not the case. So I love that model.
Well, and I
Um
think there's real teeth behind that culture.
yes.
Instead of, instead of asking people to work together, and of course we're doing that, but they're doing it with a purpose behind it. And
Mhm.
it's not simply something we're asking people to do and there's not a reason behind it, right? They all understand if they do if they uphold their responsibility, if they do their role and their job, their mission of what they're, brought into this organization to do, and they do it as best as they can possibly do it, we're all going to succeed and benefit from that.
Yes, that it's very powerful. Well, it feels like the right time to jump into how you got here because it was
Yeah.
interesting. We're always looking for, and you guys happen to be one of our customers. Not everybody on the podcast is a customer, but looking at your profile, it's like you. I feel like you've had two careers, right? You kind of started, and I don't want to spoil, but you started in one industry and then really made got to the top over there, and then I would love to unpack all of that and, anyway, just start from the beginning, if you will, and take us through how you
Well,
got
I'm old, so we can't start from the very beginning. Yeah, no, to your point, Rihanna, I've worked in two companies, and to me, I'm a very committed, loyal person that I like to see things through from the standpoint of creating opportunities, and I get really invested, frankly, in the people around me. And so, in my past career, I was in the hospitality industry, and started with that organization that was only about 10 units when I first joined that company, and saw them all the way through to I think close to 350. And we took that company public, and it was a great ride. I think I had an enormous amount of opportunity and responsibility and growth. Because of probably how I approached the roles. And so, for me, making the transition was a challenge, but I also think becoming a part of a really large organization that's publicly held, different decisions start to get made. And so
yeah.
I sought out what I described as a smaller company that could make longer term decisions and not be held to short term decisions based on quarterly earnings calls, if you will.
Yes. Yes.
So that was a big part of the motivation or the excitement I had for joining SSR. It really came about, frankly, by chance, in the fact that as I was seeking that opportunity, I had never thought about being in the AEC industry. I had someone say to me, well, why don't you, there's this position open. Why don't you interview? It'll be good practice for you. You haven't interviewed in 22 years, right? And so I did. And honestly, I absolutely felt connected pretty instantly to that CEO at the time, and really thought, wow, this could be more interesting, than I thought. And so I just wanted an opportunity to sit at the table and have the influence and the opportunity to prove myself. And so it's been almost 15 years.
And what are the different roles that you've held since being there?
I really took what I would describe as a step back. It was the VP of Human Resources, which my most of my career was focused on the people side of the business, also operations. So came in as a VP of Human Resources, and I think once you start adding value over time, I was asked to take on many of the different support functions. So marketing, I don't remember what order they came in, but marketing was added, IT was added. I led strategic planning for the organization at one point. And then really they turned that role into what they described as a CAO or a chief administrative officer. So really outside of the finance and accounting area, the support functions really reported into me, and I was, I would say, a person that really supported the CEO and made sure kind of I was a traffic cop a little bit. So got into that and then had the great opportunity to raise my hand and was COO for a couple of years post the CAO role. And I'd already been uh, I'd already been placed in a role with the board of directors at that point. And then when the CEO transition came along, I raised my hand because I felt like I was the right person at the right time for this. But I can tell you, Rianna, when I started with SSR, I had no vision or desire or even thought in my head that that's a role I wanted to be in at some point. I think it's about focusing on what value you bring in the moment you're in and the position you're in at the time. That's one of the lessons learned for me, and throughout your career, right, is not being afraid to say, "I don't know," or "I don't understand," but I'm gonna dig in and I'm gonna learn it, and, because I had a lot to learn about the industry. Absolutely.
And did you hesitate in putting your hand up at all?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and maybe more so in some of the previous positions.
Okay.
Um, Probably one of the things I say most often to people when they're asking about, advice or whatnot is like, choose to be uncomfortable.
Mhm.
I just think that is probably one of the most powerful things people can think about in their careers is the minute you feel like you've got this and you can just continue to down that path and journey and things feel, I don't want to say easy because nothing is ever easy when you have, responsibilities, but choose to be uncomfortable. And so I think choosing to raise my hand to be the COO of this company was probably even more uncomfortable for me than raising my hand for the CEO role. And but I think that's where you grow the most.
Yeah, so a lot of the women that I meet, especially they're earlier in their careers, they do get that like imposter syndrome. It sneaks up, and I would, you know, I have like I talked to you before we started pressing record. Like I'm not like a seasoned feminist. I haven't looked into like I don't know
Yeah.
all the stats, but I just based on my experience, I feel like women. That's a thing in our head. We get this head trash that's like, oh, but I'm not perfect for that. So maybe I'll just sit this out and I'll get the next one, right? Like I have a feeling that's why we have less women because we're a little bit more hesitant in some ways to put our hands up when we don't completely check all the boxes. And I just love to hear like how'd you get yourself to just say, you know what, I'm gonna go for this. Like I can do this.
Yeah, I think for me it's a little different is it wasn't a lack of confidence in I do believe anything I've ever put my mind to, I can figure out. And I work really hard
Yeah.
and I know what I know and I know what I don't know and I know how to build a really good team around me. Like
Yeah.
knowing that I can't check all those boxes. So I don't think it was that hesitance. I think it was more just in this industry, it would be you can't lead if you don't have followers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so were the people of this organization going to be bought into this decision? And if I don't have that credibility, again, you can't lead if people don't want to follow. And so I think that I just knew that I had to get in there and dig, and I think that's where I was maybe a little more hesitant, Rihanna, with the COO role, because that gave me an even more immediate focus and impact on the organization rather than the support functions I had been holding up.
Okay.
And helping to generate. So the CEO role for me was one where I think you always question yourself. I mean, any person, if they're really being honest with you, you're always going to have some doubt in the back of your mind. It might be 1%, it might be 50%, but you're always going to have some doubt. So I think the questioning myself came more at the COO juncture than it did the CEO role. And I think I had the opportunity to build up enough of my confidence and vision for what I knew and thought this company could be and how I would approach it. That I really did believe I was the right person at that moment for this company. And that was, a little of 2 years and a few months ago.
Yeah, it's well, and I think that makes total sense too, because it's like sometimes I think we put the C level on a pedestal a little bit. Like it's this scary, like I'm a VP, but like I can't be like getting to that C has this like weird stigma sometimes. Um and I'm wondering too, so you have these again, like you said, you kind of had two careers where you've like gone kind of the full gamut. Are there major differences, or do you find, like, a lot of what you were doing in this industry applies in that industry? How does that all come together?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, for me, it's about people, period, right? And of course, there's so much talk about AI and technology, and yes, our industry is embracing that. Our company is embracing that, but that's augmenting the industry, not replacing the industry. And so at a high level, it is about professional services is about the people that you're bringing to the table to serve our clients and to build those relationships. And so to me, the people equation is not foreign. So when
Mhm.
joining this organization, the application might be a little bit different, but at the core of it, it's about the people.
And and I think that's so true, and I think I feel like it's easy for people to say that, but then when you put your money where your mouth is and you have like, you're backing it up, it makes such an impact, and I'm always surprised. I read an article, I feel like it was probably HBR article a couple of years ago, but they were saying finally they're seeing HR heads becoming CEOs more, and to me, that has always been such a logical place to find a CEO because it's like the people taking care of the people, a lot of that is the most critical because you're leading. Like at the CEO level, you can't do all the work to your point, but it's like you can get the people around you and then you have to know how to keep them happy and help them grow and coach them. And I'm like, who better to do that than HR people?
Right.
Coming, but so I do think that makes a ton of sense that, you did end up in the CEO seat and that's amazing and amazing that it was from outside the industry too, because I've heard from some leaders that I talk to, and funny enough, a couple CEOs that I've talked to very recently, none of them were from the industry. So I think you're starting to see, but they when they joined, they're like, it was like earth shattering that I wasn't an engineer. Like I didn't have the engineering degree, yet I was working in a leadership role at an engineering firm, which just wasn't happening. But now, again, I think you're starting to see that shift a little bit because, to all the things you just said, a lot of it is transferable and it's not so unique. But yeah, you do need to learn the industry. Well, and I would say, I mean, how did you go about how did you learn about the industry once you started? Like, what was your sort of playbook that you were like, all right, I'm here now. Like, where did you start?
Well, I mean, from the very beginning, it was truly just learning like what were all the different roles and responsibilities, jobs we even had in this organization, right? Because we were pretty diverse even back then, 15 years ago. And so it was really kind of learning it more from I'll say from a, uh mechanics standpoint. But one of the things for me that I believe in staying close to the people that do, which maybe
Mhm.
sounds a little quirky, But I know when I became COO, Rihanna, one of the things I wanted to make sure I did was go out and shadow all of the different roles and jobs we had, in the organization. And so, you found me on the side of a road with some of our CE&I people, which is construction engineering and inspection, and doing slump testing on concrete in my work boots and hard hat, right? Like get dirty, right? Get in it with them and understand. And so it was both about me learning firsthand what they do, but it was also about the opportunity to make sure they're seen, heard, and valued. And
Yeah.
what could we do to be a better employer? What could we do to provide them with something different, or something they weren't having their need met, to make sure we could serve our clients at the highest level? So it was almost a one-on-one focus group, right, with some of our, employee owners out there. And so, again, we have, at the time, 10 business units. And so it was going out and doing those inspections with them, spending time with people traveling to meet with clients. And I think the closer you stay to what your organization delivers and does, the
Mhm.
more effective you're going to be. I can't make decisions about things or even ask for feedback about a decision if I don't even know what I'm solving for. And so to me, you find out what you're solving for by being with your clients, being with your people that are on the front line serving our clients every single day.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like a lot of businesses could learn from that approach. I feel like banks do that. Like, they're,
Oh,
like, famous for, like, when you join, it doesn't like, you're a teller and you do a couple different jobs in the branches
sure.
because yeah, it's like you can't like you said it very well, like, how can I make decisions without really deeply understanding it? So, that's a great approach, I'm sure the people, like you said, the people that are out in the field doing the work, yeah, they probably don't always feel connected to,
That's right.
the corporate side to so for you to be out there, I'm sure that meant a lot to them as well.
Yeah.
Um, well, and I think so
I
the
have
other
to I have to interject there for a
Yeah.
second, because if anybody from my company would watch this or see it, and I imagine there'll be a couple, right? My least favorite word, Niana, is corporate. And I only
Uh-huh.
say the word corporate to tell you it's my least favorite word, right? And so to me, it absolutely screams bureaucracy.
Yes.
And I think sometimes people unfortunately think that processes and procedures are something that we have, and it creates bureaucracy. But if you have
Mhm.
effective processes and procedures, it actually aligns with having a non-chaotic environment, right? And you
Yes.
protect the performance of the company, which again, I'm trying to work to protect all of the owners of the organization, just like they're trying to work to protect all of their fellow owners of the company. So
Yeah.
I just have to say, corporate is
I
not.
love that. Yeah. I'm not very corporate myself, so like I said, I don't really like the rule following and,
Yeah.
the box checking, but,
Mm.
well, and so I think we had talked a little bit about even before we started, recording the podcast, but we're seeing a lot of women entering colleges and universities to get architecture degrees, engineering degrees, more so than ever. But there's still, sort of this lag with, I guess if you do the math, it's like, well, that's recent. It takes people time to grow in their career and eventually get to the leadership space, but have you seen, shifts in more, females putting up their hand and wanting to take leadership roles, from where you sit? Is that something you see shifting? Because that's a lot of those conversations I'm having with women earlier in their careers. They're wanting to, know that, "Hey, there's opportunity here." Do you see opportunity out there?
I do, and I do think it's shifting. I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed over the last couple of years being in this role is watching other people around that are getting into these same types of positions. And I can think about half a dozen women that have been moved into CEO roles that I know personally. And really, for whatever reason, if it's just one or two people that started this years and years long before I was ever put in this position, but just broadening people's perspective, like, okay, maybe this doesn't have to be an engineer, or it doesn't have to be a technical leader in the organization. There's a different skill set for this role and this responsibility. And so I do think that the mind shift is changing out there, and it's evidenced again by a handful of people that I could name by name, which I won't at the moment, but like good friends of mine that have been promoted over the last even 12 months, and it's exciting to see that there's different perspectives being represented out there. Some are engineers and some are not. But there's, I think a broader perspective about the diversity and the skills needed to be in this role.
That is really great to hear. And
And I do think that I guess I was a little surprised and probably shouldn't have been, but I know when I was placed in this role and have this great, opportunity and responsibility, I did have more, young females in SSR in my company, in our company, that reached out and said, wow, like,
yeah,
I mean, it is seeing somebody in, that looks like you, if you will, or they see a path. And so if that's just giving people a little more courage to go, wow, it could be me, or belief in themselves. If that accomplished that at our company, then I'm really excited, because we have incredible talented people in the company in general, but lots of young females coming up in the organization, whether they're project managers serving our clients, or they're technical experts, or they want to lead and manage people, whatever track they want to get on. Hopefully that just gave them just a nudge more confidence that it doesn't matter what gender you are or what background you have, you can absolutely have more responsibility if you lean in and bring value to the company.
and that what you just described is exactly why we wanted to start this podcast, because like you said, it's like if one person just listens and is like,
Yeah.
I can do that too, that's kind of what we're here for. So I love that whole story. And I know we're kind of getting close to time. I could just
Yeah.
keep This is always my problem, is I could just keep talking and they're like, keep it to 30 minutes. What do we want to finish with? I guess well, especially in your leadership role today, like as people are, like you said, trying to see themselves in,
Mhm.
bigger roles, what would be maybe your greatest strength or two strengths if you need to pick one? And really, how have you leaned on those as you've, stepped into the CEO and president role?
I mean, for me, the thing I lean on the most is absolutely around being an effective communicator. And I'm not necessarily speaking about speaking to a group. I can do that, I think, okay. But to me, it's about how do you see the broader vision of what's happening in the organization, and how do you bring people together? How do you get them all to be bought into that vision and connect to that vision? And where do you see some, I don't know, divide, if you will, and how do you bring that together? So communication for me is a huge skill that this role it's imperative for this role to have, whether that's using it externally or internally. I think the other thing is just keeping that vision for the company in front of people, right? So sometimes people will say, well, Susan, what's the most important thing we're working on? And I will back up and say, you know what? Every day I think about how we will continue to be a generational firm. And I mentioned that to you earlier. So to me, when I first was placed in this role in September of 23, I said day one to everybody in the organization, 8 to 10 years from now, I want to pass this organization to the next generation stronger than we all received it that day. And that's what I think about every day. So whether it's the growth we're trying to achieve, or the profitability we're trying to achieve, or the talent we're attracting and retaining, it is all about, are we growing more strongly than what we were, the previous week, the previous month, the previous year? And is it going to be a company that continues for decades and decades to come. The characteristic, Rihanna, that is so important to me and around the leadership team, because it's not just communication, it's not just painting the vision, it's also about building the team. And I mentioned that kind of on the onset, right? I can be a really good CEO or I can be a good leader, but if we don't have a team of people supporting one another and leading the organization and then have great people underneath that, we're not going to be what we potentially could be. And so that team building aspect is really important to me. So building a team that they trust each other, building a team that we communicate well with one another. Ultimately, that's what's going to help us be that long-term company.
Fantastic, Susan. Thank you so much. Any other words of advice that you would want to leave for anybody listening in?
Well, if people are listening to try to figure out how to grow their career, choose to be uncomfortable.
I love that. I need to take that to heart sometimes myself. So,
Yeah. Take a
um,
risk.
yes,
Take a risk. And you're going to have some failures, but take a risk.
that needs to be a whole different podcast episode, I think. A
Sure.
lot of people struggle with that, for sure. Well, I so appreciate you joining us today, and thank you
Thank
to
you
all.
for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you to our listeners as well. And we appreciate you listening to Breaking Ground Women in AEC Leadership. If today's episode resonates with you, be sure to follow, leave a review, or of course, share it with someone in your network. And if you have a story to share or you know someone that would be a great guest for our podcast, please send us an email. You can find our contact info in the podcast bio. And until next time, keep breaking new ground.